I'd like to welcome our audience to take a sneak preview into the life of Asher Jacobs. It's his story today. So, you before you came to Yeshua, you took quite an interesting journey, didn't you?
That's right.
That journey took you to the Life Giver, which I'm hoping you're going to explain a little later on.
Yeah.
So actually, welcome Asher. Thank
you
you
very
for being willing to share your story, and I'm sure our audience will really love this.
Thank you.
So your story begins. It begins in Nottingham.
That's right.
You were born into a family of 11 children. Actually, it was in St Anne's, wasn't it? St Anne's, Nottinghamshire.
That's right.
And that's a neighbourhood in itself, isn't it?
Definitely.
So tell us a bit about your family and your upbringing.
Okay, so I was brought up in an Irish Catholic family. I think my family came over to England in the late 1950s, early 1960s, and moved into the St Anne's area where I was born. It was a very troubled upbringing. My father was extremely abusive in many kind of ways, and rejected me from a very early age. So it was quite difficult upbringing.
And so you in St Anne's, and then you moved to West Bridgford?
That's right, yeah, after a couple of years in St Anne's.
Okay, and then tell us a little bit about your schooling in West Bridgford.
Okay, I started off going to a secular school, which I really enjoyed. I loved the teachers, they were great. And we used to go to Sunday school on a Sunday. But then a Catholic school opened up in the area, and then all of us had to go to the new Catholic school.
Okay. So you moved. So this was when you were what in your junior years?
I think I was about 7 years of age.
Yeah, and then you moved into a senior school. Yeah.
I moved into a primary school, infants and primary Catholic school.
Right.
And then from there, moved into to a comprehensive school at the age of 11.
Okay, and that actually had quite devastating repercussions for you. Actually, did your father was not very good to you, was he, when you were growing up?
No.
Okay.
I mean, my father treated me completely different to the rest of the family. Okay. I felt at the time. Coming from a very, very early memory of being taken to the park with my siblings, and being on the swings, and that my dad was pushing all of my brothers and sisters, but he refused to push me. He just said to me, I need to do it myself. So I was treated very differently. He was abusive, in, as I say, many different kind of ways.
Okay. So the other thing that sort of complicated your life or added to that kind of abusive situation, tell us about that, the trauma of being in a Catholic school and, share that experience with us.
Okay, so I moved on to secondary school age 11, and in the first year of school, I got into trouble from almost the first term that I was in secondary school, and I had lots of problems when I was at school, always getting into trouble. And then there was one incident where I was out on the playground with my friends and we were playing football, and the football went onto the roof of the building. So I climbed up with my friend to get the football and also to mess about on the roof of the building. So one of the teachers came along, science teacher, head of science, and he came and put us on detention. Unfortunately, during that detention, something happened to me that devastated me. We were told that we need to clean the desks, and I had my back to the teacher, and my friend was cleaning the desk in front of me with his back to the teacher, so he couldn't see what the teacher was doing, but the teacher came behind me, and he touched me inappropriately in a sexual way. So I was shocked, and I decided I was going to tell my form tutor about this, who was a really lovely woman with a huge heart, and I had a lot of respect for her. So I told her about it, and she said that I needed to report this to the headmaster, which I was really unwilling to do as a first year student. The only thing we heard about the headmaster is you were sent to him to get the cane.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I really didn't want to do that. She goes, well, really, it's going to be a bit difficult to believe you if you're not prepared to take it to the headmaster. And because I had so much respect for her, that I thought, okay, I'm going to do that. And she asked me to put it in writing. and then we took it to the headmaster's office. I was interrogated for weeks. I was made to stand outside the headmaster's office every break time, so I skipped lunches, went without food often, or just got the scraps at the end of the lunch break. And I was interrogated for 2 weeks, trying to make out that I was lying. And at the end of it, they tried to get me to sign something with lots of big words. I mean, I was 11 years of age, I didn't understand it. So, but I didn't want it to get home to my parents, because my background was abusive in my parental home anyway. So, but in the end, I agreed to sign something that they told me said that you might have been mistaken. So I signed, and they said that if you sign it, we won't get your parents involved. You know, you don't have to worry about anything. As soon as I signed it, they took me home, and I was hoping on the drive home that it'd be my mum who would be there. But unfortunately,
did you get on well with your mum?
I love my mum, and I was really close to my mum. But it wasn't my mum; it was my father, and he was the person who was abusing me at home. So it wasn't. I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel good, and it wasn't. You know, it was a really difficult time. I didn't really get much support from my family. I was just asked if I was lying or telling the truth, and I told them I was telling the truth. And they were called into school to see the headmaster and the head of years. And on that occasion, I was asked, my parents were told that I would just be asked to stay away from school for 2 weeks, for the last 2 weeks of term, and then it was the summer holidays, and then to come back the next year. So that was a really difficult time for me. I was going through lots of turmoil and dreading going back to school. And then when I went back to school, I heard from some of my classmates that actually the head of the first year had gone in to the form. She was a nun, this woman, and she'd gone into the form and she said to all of my classmates that my name at the time was Martin McElroy. She said, Martin McElroy has been suspended from school for telling lies about teachers, and let this be a lesson to all of you. So that was really hard and really difficult, and it just kind of set me on a trajectory really of destruction. I didn't trust authority. Nobody believed me. What's the point anyway? People think I'm this bad person, and if that's what you think I am, that's what I'm going to be.
So this is early 11 to 13, 14. So did you start sort of drinking and?
Yeah, at the age of 13, I started drinking. I took a bottle of vodka to school and drank it with my mates in the toilet. Continued to drink, got into abusing solvents at that age as well. So I was sniffing glue, I was sniffing something called Zoff, and anything that I could get high off really. And then at the age of around about 15, started moving onto weed.
Quite a sort of reckless journey at such an early age, really, isn't it?
Definitely.
Yeah, okay. So at the age of 16, you decided to leave home, yeah?
That's right.
And your early start of a journey just continued, yeah? And this was around the time of 1982, 1983. Okay, and Boy George. Right. So tell me a bit about that sort of experience for you.
I had a friend at the time who's kind of into alternative kind of music, and we were on a trip to visit his cousins in Scotland, and we were on the coach, and he had an NME, which is a musical newspaper of the time, and he said, "Oh, what do you think to this guy?" And then showed me a picture and read about him, and I thought, "Oh, right, he's very different, you know." But
what was different about him?
Well, he looked like a woman.
Okay.
But he was a man, so
right.
It's Boy George. So yeah, and he wore lots of makeup and had long hair and was very flamboyant and very outrageous.
And he was in the charts at the time.
And he was in the charts at the time. Yeah, he was just coming up at the time into the charts at the time. So yeah, I kind of thought this is somebody I felt like I could identify with. He was brought up. Himself was brought up an Irish Catholic. With an abusive father, violently abusive, his father was. And he's just somebody I felt a connection with. And I started to look at his music and other music of the time as well.
So similar sort of story to you. Do you think that's why you were drawn to him?
I think so, yeah. And also by the fact that he was out as a gay man, and we're kind of out, yeah.
Okay. And did you start to dress like him?
A little bit like him. I kind of, but not as colourful. I started to dress in black and wear makeup and yeah.
So do you think then, looking back now, obviously many years ago, what do you think was driving you? What do you think was what you were searching for to fill something, or what was your greatest need? Obviously your father was abusive, you've had that serious experience with the teachers at school. Now there's this guy that's come along that looks quite appealing and you're drawn to him. What was it, do you think, now?
Looking back now, I kind of realised that I was looking for acceptance, I was looking for love. I've been rejected by society, been rejected by teachers, been rejected by my father. I just faced rejection wherever I was, and here I felt like here's something I can identify with, a person I can identify with, a scene that I can identify with. So I started to, but most of it was the acceptance, but most of all it was love that I was looking for.
Okay, yeah. So you continued on this. Tell me, did you started to engage in a gay lifestyle, did you then, or not?
Yes. Well, I was kind of like in touch with Gay Switchboard as a young person, as a young teen, about 15. And they told me about the gay bars that I could go to. So I started to go to gay bars, yeah.
And so, okay, so you decided to leave Nottingham then, did you?
Not at that time. Not at that time. Okay. I was going to gay bars. I was in fleeting relationships with older men, and abused and beaten. Wasn't having very good experiences really, and I was, as I say, I was using drugs as well. I was smoking weed and at the time, and then I decided I was going to go to London, because I heard that London was a great place to be if you were gay, especially in the Earl's Court area, which at the time was like the gay village. Everybody, all the gays, not all the gays, but a lot of gays were living in the area, and they had gay bars and gay clubs, and you could walk down the street holding hands and kissing. So I thought that's where I want to be. I want to be in London, don't want to be in Nottingham. So
this lifestyle of sort of sofa surfing, in and out of fleeting relationships and stuff like that. How did that sort of, is that something you wanted? I mean, is it something, what was you searching for? Because that sounds like no place to be. That sounds a little bit...
I mean, at the time, for me, it was exciting. I was on a journey. I mean, when we moved to London, I was with a couple of friends of mine. When we moved there, I had all high expectations of how things were going to go. The first night that I was down there, I went to a gay bar and got off with the first gay man that chatted me up. I went back to his place. So we had somewhere to stay that night at least. So prior to going to London, I forgot to mention that one of my relationships that I was in, he was extremely abusive to me.
Oh, right.
He got me into selling sex.
Oh, right.
So when I went down to London, I continued to sell sex. I stayed at this guy's one night. He gave us the keys to, this was in the Tolsall estate in Brixton, and he gave us the keys to a flat that he was looking after for somebody who was in prison. There was a flat downstairs, and he says, there's the keys. Move in, change the locks and squat it. So that's pretty much what we did. We squatted that property.
And that was quite a popular thing to do, wasn't it? I suppose if you had nowhere to be, just to squat on somebody's place.
Just to squat on empty property,
okay.
Yeah. Especially in London, with lots of squats about. So yeah, but then my friends decided they were coming back, but I thought, no way, am I going back to Nottingham? I'm staying in London, and I'm not going back to Nottingham. I'm going back home. I'm not going back to my abusive father. I'm staying here. So I did, but again, it was like sofa surfing, prostitution, harder drugs, cocaine, amphetamines, and lived that kind of a lifestyle for about a year that I was there for.
So you decided then, after about a year, to come back to Nottingham. Yeah.
Yeah. I was in a bit of a mess with drugs and just with life in general, and I knew that I was.
Were you eating? Were you?
No, I wasn't eating a lot actually. I lost a lot of weight, and so I kind of thought I need to go back to Nottingham and get away from the drugs. I thought at the time, come to Nottingham, and so I decided that's what I was going to do. And I hadn't been in touch with my parents. I hadn't been in touch with my mum.
So they didn't know that you were alive, or what had happened to you, or where you'd gone?
No, that's right. Well, they did know I was in London, and I think I contacted my mum once, and she knew I was in London. She contacted some cousins of ours who lived there at the time, asking if they'd seen me. But when I came back, it was New Year's Eve, and there was an Irish tradition that if a tall, dark stranger turned up at your door with a lump of coal in one pocket and a bottle of whiskey in the other pocket, and they knocked on your door at 12 bells, then you had good luck for the rest of the year.
Okay.
So I thought, okay, I'm gonna do that. Although I didn't have a lump of coal and I didn't have a bottle of whiskey, but I did knock on their door at 12 bells, and my mum opened the door, and she just threw her arms around me and embraced me, and she was happy to see me, and lots of kisses, and she took me in to the front room where my father was, and she's saying, Dad, look who's here, and then he saw me, and he just looked up at me and grunted and just went on with watching the TV. So he wasn't impressed either way about me being there.
And how did that make you feel?
Rejected again. Yeah.
Because you'd come back home to a place where I think you were expecting to be loved and to be received, and yet your father was not good towards you.
Yeah, well, I was loved and received by my mum, but my dad, no. But then there was no change for my dad, really.
So things hadn't changed much at all?
Things hadn't changed.
Okay.
And it wasn't long. I was just there a couple of weeks before my dad threw me out onto the street. I was looking, obviously, living a gay lifestyle, and that was obvious to him. He just
wasn't having any of it.
No, threw me out.
Do you think that's just because it was an Irish culture that you're not supposed to be that way?
I think it was just the culture at the time. It wasn't just the Irish. It was
just
everywhere. You found out your son was gay. Lots of young men got thrown out of home when they came out as gay or was suspected of being gay.
Okay. So then your life is spiralling now out of control. You're continuing this sort of promiscuous sort of lifestyle and living this here, there and ever, sofa surfing, all that kind of stuff. So let's try to condense like 10 years. Tell us a bit about the whole scene in about 10 years of your life.
Okay.
What with this sort of happening?
So during this time, I was kind of into what at the time I didn't call it goth, but now looking back I think it was a bit goth that I was into. I was dressing in black and wearing lots of makeup, and I was kind of experimenting with Satanism and the occult and witchcraft, and that kind of went on for a while. I came off the gay scene because I didn't feel like I fitted into the gay scene, but then I met this amazing woman, and she was like a punk. And she was just brilliant, and I loved her. And
so like the punk with the spiky hair.
She had lots of spikes all over her head, and
pink and green and whatever else.
Makeup and piercings.
Yeah.
And she kind of steered me in a new direction and introduced me to other people who were also punk, and they were just accepted me. Whether and the majority of them were straight, and it wasn't like on the gay scene, it was all gays together, but here it was just everybody. But what we all had things in common. We were all disaffected youth, and we were angry at the system. We'd been rejected throughout our lives. We were different and found it difficult to fit in anywhere. But here's where I fitted in with these people, so I became a part of that. Left the kind of the makeup and the goth behind, and got into more hardcore kind of punk.
Okay. And what was their stance? What were they about? If you were a punk rocker, as we used to call it years ago, if you were punk, what did they stand for?
Basically what they stood for was anarchy.
Right.
Against the system, against authority, trash the state, trash the police, everything, just get rid of pretty much what we're seeing a lot in the news today. Yeah.
So in that time, you had an encounter going to prison. So tell us a little bit about that as well.
Okay. Actually, this was prior to me becoming a punk that I went to prison.
Okay.
This is while I was in my flamboyant stage. And basically what was happening was I was addicted to drugs. I'd got back into the drugs when I came back to Nottingham. I'd started injecting. So we used to rob people to get money. We robbed people, and there was prostitution involved with that as well. So yeah, I ended up, and we thought, me and my friends who were doing this at the time, we just thought, well, we used to do punters and pick up punters, and punters are men who pay for sex, basically.
Right.
So we would find punters and pick them up and then take them back to my mate's flat and rob them. It's called clipping, so we'd clip them. So that's what we did. We thought we was onto a little learner here, because who's going to go to the police saying that they've been with a prostitute, which is illegal, and got robbed. Unfortunately, somebody did, and I ended up going to prison at that time. At that time, as I say, I was still dressing flamboyantly. I had, my plucked eyebrows. I was wearing makeup, looked very pretty, very feminine, and my clothes were like half and half, male, female kind of clothes. So when I went to prison, it wasn't an easy time for me at all. I was remanded into custody, in fact, for a number of months. Because I was no fixed abode, so they had nowhere safe to bail me to. So I was remanded into Glenparva young offenders prison.
So that was the first encounter then?
That was the first encounter, and it was really difficult. They either just wanted to beat you up or rape you, basically, in prison, and you looked like that. So I managed to get bailed out to my sister's address, and from there, it was a waiting trial. And during that time, I went bang at it with the drugs, going at it really hard with the drugs, and thought, well, I'm going to go to prison anyway. And I thought, if I go to prison, I'm going to kill myself, so I'm just going to go bang at it with the drugs. And I was using really heavily, continuing to commit crime to get the drugs. And then when it came to the trial, I actually got 120 hours community service, and also the time I'd already served in remand was included in my sentence. So I was released back onto the streets again, or back to my sister's house. But by this time, I had a habit. So I continued to commit crime.
Just to feed that habit? To
feed that habit. And a lot of that was shoplifting, and we used to take orders from people and go shoplifting in different towns. And me and a friend, we got caught shoplifting, and I went to prison for the second time. And this time I was on a sentence straight away. It was obvious to the judge that I was using drugs.
Right.
So they said, this is for your own good, and they sentenced me. When I got there, I had bright blue hair at the time, and I was really proud of it. It was in a long, thick, wide Mohican, and I was really proud. It took me a long time to grow, and because it was young offenders, the culture at the time was they cut your hair. Right. So they shaved the back of my head and left this blue on the top. But that's what happened in prison, and then we had to go and see the doctor, and the doctor took one look at me and said, "Oh, is there any chance that you could be HIV positive?" Right. Because I looked obviously gay. Not only that, because I had track marks all up my arms and my hands, and that from injecting drugs, and we did share needles at the time, and I said, "Well, I'm gay and I'm a drug user." So, and this was at the height of the HIV epidemic. And I was put into isolation on the hospital wing for the entire sentence, which was good because it kept me safe from the other people who were in the prison, and also I had my own space. I actually had an ensuite bathroom, it was okay. Whilst I was in prison, a teacher came and she said, "Is there any kind of books? Is there anything you're interested in? I'm going to get you some books from the library, and what you're interested in." I said, "Well, if you can get some books on Satanism, that'd be great." Anyway, she came back with a book that we might know of, The Cross and the Switchblade. So I read the book, and I was really kind of impressed with it, but it wasn't what I was expecting.
Yes.
But yeah, that was my experience the second time in prison.
Okay, so if you could try to capture this 10-year period or that lifestyle, what would be a phrase that you would use to sort of capture all of this sort of the surfacing, the sex, the addictions, all the stuff that you've sort of painted for our audience as a picture? How would you describe that?
I would say that it started off as a party, but that party ended up being my prison, because my life after prison itself went on for years, living the punk lifestyle, being very politically active, and even so much as going to London for the anti-poll tax demonstrations, which ended up in riots in London in Trafalgar Square. And I was there. I was a part of that rioting with everybody else. But I'd come to a point in my life where I'd experienced all this homelessness, this abuse, this substance misuse, prison, crime. And it did start off as a party. It was a great, exciting journey that I embarked on. But then I came to the realisation, actually, I'm addicted. And I feel like I'm in a prison now, the prison of my addictions. So yeah, from a party to a prison is how I would describe it, yeah.
Wow. Thank you for that. So, okay, so let's just journey on just a little bit then. So it's now 1991, and it's the winter of 1991, and you just happened, if I can say that, to encounter the Congregation of Yahweh. We were based in Newstead Grove, and tell us a little bit about how that came to be.
Okay, so I was begging in the market square, which I used to do on a regular basis.
Tell me, begging pitch, tell me about that.
Yeah, I had my own begging pitch.
Which means what?
Which means basically the little spot where you go every day.
And nobody else takes that spot?
It's advisable not to take that spot. If you're on the streets and you take somebody else's begging pitch, you'll be asked to move on by the person whose pitch it is. So, and if not, obviously things can get messy. So yeah, I had my own begging pitch, and then this lad called John, who we now know as Israel. Okay. He came to see me on the streets, and he came up to me and he said that he used to be on the streets, and he used to be a drug addict. And then he met somebody called Yeshua, and this Yeshua, this man had helped him to get off his drugs and off his alcohol and out of his life of destruction, really. And as I say, at that time, I come to the realisation that I was in a desperate state. And I thought, this Yeshua, is he a drugs counsellor? Is he a youth worker? What is he? He said, I definitely want to meet him. Who is he? And then John proceeded to tell me, you might know him as Jesus.
And how did that make you feel?
So that didn't make me feel good at all. Because of my experiences being grown up, I rejected Catholicism when I was about 13. And because of my experiences being brought up in a Catholic home, and I felt it was hypocrisy, and I thought Christianity was hypocrisy. I'd read the Bible. When I was into Satanism, I used to read bits of the Bible. I was actively in the political part of the gay movement, and it was known to us that we were not accepted. And I knew in the Bible it says in Leviticus that man shall not lie with a man, for this is an abomination to God. So this is what I said to John. I said to him, how can I don't want your God. I don't want your Jesus. You know what you can do with your Jesus? You know where you can shove your Jesus? I don't want anything to do with Jesus. How can this God, how can he just condemn me just because of who I love? I'm not interested. So, years later, John told me that when we had that discussion, heated discussion, he thought that I was going to punch him at that time. But John kept coming back to me on my begging pitch. And I was accommodated at this time. I just got a council flat. So when he came to see it, for some reason, I gave him my address. And he came round to see me at my flat, but I wouldn't open the door to him. And he just kept coming back to my begging pitch. And every time he was talking to me, I just sensed this. The only way I can describe it is unconditional love. I didn't feel like there was any strings attached to it. And I thought, what's this about? And he invited me to go to a youth meeting where he was giving his testimony. So that is what I did. I think from a Thursday evening, I had planned to go out with my mates that night, so I was going to go there for half an hour just to show my face, to be nice and then leave. But I couldn't get out of my chair once I was there. And John gave his testimony. Right at the very end, there was an altar call. And during that altar call, there was a song that was being played. And that song was called Come to the Life Giver.
Yeah.
Yeshua the Life Giver.
Yeah.
And John asked me, so I didn't want to go for the altar call. I said, it's all very nice. It's lovely and all that, all the kids here, but yeah, it's not for me. And I went home that night and went to bed and slept. And when you're an addict and you wake up in the morning, the first thing you want to do is you want to go and get a hit, or when you're an alcoholic, you want to go and get a drink. And if you don't, when you wake up, you're rattling. It's like you're shaking, you're sweating. You just need to get a hit.
Right.
And so the next day I woke up, and I woke up and I was humming a tune. And as I was humming this tune, it was making me feel really nice inside. And I thought, what's this? What's this tune I'm humming? I have no idea. Where's this tune come from? I was a punk. We didn't listen to tunes. We listened to loud, raucous music. So to me, to be wonderful. And then I remembered where I'd been the night before. Right. And I remembered it was the song from the altar call, Come to the Life Giver, Yeshua the Life Giver. And then when I remembered that it was about Jesus, about Yeshua, then I just shook it off. I thought, don't want none of that. And I shook that song off me. And as I did, I didn't wake up rattling. But as soon as I shook that song off and that feeling off me, I started to rattle.
That's really interesting.
Started to rattle, and I started to sweat and started to shake, and that peaceful, loving feeling just went. So looking at it now, I feel that it was Yeshua talking to me at that time. And then John invited me to another meeting.
Yes.
And this meeting was on a Sunday evening, an outreach meeting. And it was quite long. And then there was a gentleman who preached for quite a while. And I really wasn't into it. But again, I couldn't get out of my seat and move. But then right at the very end, somebody stood up, and that's somebody who I now know was Pastor Nathan. So Pastor Nathan stood up, and as he did so, my heart just leapt in my chest. And I knew that I had to listen to what he was about to say. And basically, Pastor Nathan had what we call a word of knowledge. And he said, there are two people in this room tonight, and Yeshua wants you both to know him today. One of you has been searching other religions and trying to find peace in these religions, but you're not going to find it anywhere until you come to Yeshua. And them words that he spoke just pierced my heart, and I knew he was talking about me because I had been involved in every kind of religion outside of Christianity, and I knew without a doubt he was talking about me. And I broke down and started to cry. And John, who was sat next to me, said, I told him, he's talking about me. He's talking about me. How can he know? He's talking about me. How can he know that? He's talking about me. And he went off. He said, wait here, I'm just going to go and fetch him. They went to fetch Pastor Nathan. And then they told me what I needed to do, that I needed to accept that I was a sinner, that I needed to believe that Yeshua was the Messiah, and that he died for my sins, and that I needed to accept that and confess my sins, and then he will come into my life. So I was just crying and saying, yes, 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 just pray. And as they were praying for me, I was just crying, so many tears. I was just so broken by the words. And then Pastor Nathan stopped and he said, now, how do you feel? And then as he said that, I stopped crying and I just sensed this love and this joy and this peace just flowing through my whole body. And I felt that in that moment, I'd been changed. I'd been transformed. I felt like I'd become a new person. And now we know it says in Scripture to be born again. And I know in that moment and in that instant, I was born again.
So you dreadlocks and everything.
I had dreadlocks, I had piercings, I had all
skinny,
of that.
I remember very well what you looked like.
I didn't look good in my ripped up, torn up, dirty clothes. That's how I looked at the time. And but I knew that my life had changed. I went home that night and I felt it was like when this love and this joy, this peace was better than any drug that I'd ever injected or taken or smoked or anything. It was better than any of that. It was just pure love and pure joy and pure peace. So that night when I went home, I thought, I don't want to go to sleep, because maybe it's like when you take drugs, the next day you're just going to wake up and it's all gone. So I wanted it to last and I didn't want to sleep. But eventually I fell to sleep. I had the best night's sleep I've ever had. And the next day I woke up and I was still feeling this love and this joy and this peace and this newness of life. So I thought, this is real, this is Yeshua. And but I knew something had to be different in me. It didn't seem right to me, because I knew that the punk lifestyle, the anarchy, the chaos, there used to be a band called Crass that used to have a poster on the wall. It was one of their albums, and it said on it, Jesus died for his own sins, not mine. So we didn't have any respect for Jesus or Christianity authority. So I knew these two can't mix. So I cut off all my dreadlocks, took out all my piercings. I went to my family and begged up some clothes off my brothers, and they gave me some ill-fitting suits and shirts and what have you. And then the next Sunday I turned up at church and I was in a suit and tie, so people were a bit shocked as to what had happened there.
Fantastic. Yeah. It's a fantastic story. So if I could sort of, as we're coming down to the close of this story of yours, you've been on an incredible journey, absolutely incredible journey. And you're sitting here, look, normal, for want of better expression. But what words of encouragement would you give to anybody listening in right now? If the journey that they're on, if it's the same as yours, what words would you encourage them with? How can they change? What is there hope? Is there hope from party to present? Is there hope? Yeah. What words would you encourage people with?
I think that what I would say is the words that were spoken to me that came through that song, and that would be, come to the life giver. Yeshua the life giver. Because he can and he does change lives. I found life through Yeshua. In that moment, when I was prayed for, my life was transformed. He gave me new life. So what I would say, I would only encourage you, it doesn't matter where you're coming from. It doesn't matter what you've done, where you've been, what's happened to you. Yeshua can bring healing, deep healing that can transform your life. So I would just encourage you, come to Yeshua, come to the life giver, and see what he can do for you.
Thank you, Asher. I so appreciated you sharing your story with us. And can I just thank you, and may Yahweh Almighty just come to your aid and continue his healing in your life, because I am sure that is continuing even today.
Yes.
So Yahweh bless you and continue his work in your life. Thank you so much for sharing with us your story.
Thank you for having me.